Hello. So this time I want you to, again, think about comparison of the poems, but you're going to think about people who were affected by war but weren't in the war, okay? So people on the outside of war, people impacted in a different way by war, okay? And what I want you to do is do some planning. Choose 2 poems, do some planning, and then start to write, okay? You're going to write for 45 minutes using the SMILE acronym. Structure, meaning, imagery, language and effect. And you're going to use SQIs, MQEs and Cs, all right? Remember that word level squishing gets you lots and lots of marks, so do be precise about the meanings and the types of words that are being used and their effect, okay? So if you think about poems that describe the impact of war on other people, you might think about Poppies. And in Poppies, you know, you've got the mother and you watch her almost sort of reminiscing about her relationship with her boy, him growing up, him sort of becoming a teenager, the closeness, the changing bond, her letting him go, opening the door, letting a songbird from its cage, letting him out into the big wide world, into a sense of freedom. But there's a real sense of loneliness in that poem, and isolation, because actually they're never together. She's only remembering them being together, and she's alone at the end when she's like a wishbone against the war memorial. And you never hear about anyone else. You never hear a dad or any other children. So it's a really lonely poem, especially for that mother. So maybe think about Poppies. Another poem where people are affected by war, you could think about Charge of the Light Brigade. Now, even though we're in war and we're talking about the Noble 600 and all of those, but you've actually got at the end, honour the Light Brigade. Okay, so we're getting a command. We're being told, as people who are observers, to do something. We're given a command to keep honouring them and to remember them and memorialise them. So that idea of an audience being told to do something. So that's how people are affected by war as well. War photographer. So this is one where we've got a narrator, and they're sort of an omniscient narrator, so they're watching. They're almost watching, and they're describing in third person what this war photographer's doing. And how that war photographer is preparing the dark room as though this were a priest preparing to intone a mass. So it's a real routine and care and love and respect that's going about him developing those photographs. It's not a rush job. They're not digital, they're not quick, they're not throwaway, they're not deletable. You have to go through a whole slow process, and time has to pass between taking the photo in the war zone, getting home, and then having all of these memories, spools of suffering, he calls them, or she calls them, inside the negatives inside the camera. And so there's a time passing there in where the photographer has to come home and then develop the pictures, and straight away the senses are really immediate, and they're taken straight back to those moments and those contacts with people, and so that's really difficult. And so that's kind of a sense of delayed, I guess, dealing with something. They also talk about how his hands did not tremble then, though seem to now, as if developing the photos is harder than being in the war zone, as if you actually have to face it when it's quiet and you're home and you're on your own, and you've got to sort of deal with it, rather than the action of being in war where you don't get time to think about it. So another one you can think about is kamikaze, and how people are affected by war on the other side. And you could think about the cultural effects, and you could think about kamikaze and that family, and the narrator of the girl talking about her family and how they learned not to talk to him. They learned that he was there, but he wasn't actually one of their family, because he'd come back and not seen his duty through. So you could think about kamikaze. He hadn't completed his mission, and so there's a lack of dignity, sadly, there. He'd come back and he'd stayed alive, but what would be the better way to die? It's a strange ending, isn't it? So they're all people who've been affected by war and on the outside of war. So have a think about the 2 that you would write about. Start to plan and talk about the structure first. So look at your 2 poems and write about the structure. So you might think about the layout. You might think about whether it's regular or irregular. Is there rhyme, rhythm, caesura, enjambment? But why? Don't just name things. Say why it's there. What impact does it have on our understanding of the impact of war? Okay, structure first. Meaning, pick your quotes, talk about their meaning, talk about their obvious meaning, talk about their subtle meaning, their abstract meaning. Imagery, pick some lines, talk about similes, metaphors, personification, anthropomorphism, anything that creates an image in your mind. What do we come next? SMIL, language. Okay, so analyse some language, squish some words, talk about the nouns, the verbs, the adjectives, the pronouns, all those sorts of things, lexical fields, anything to do with the language. And then E, effect. Really, really important. Okay, effect. Okay, have fun. I'll see you soon. Bye.